So we're coming to the end of this canto about the kingdom of the little life. And in this last section, we've been reading about how these living creatures, the first beginning of a kind of animal mind comes. So that they are creatures whose only passion is to survive. They have thoughts, but they're very weak and powerless thoughts. An animal limited by its feeding space. This creature, it's an intermediate stage in the development of human beings. It doesn't know anything about the immortal spirit living within. And it has no greater, deeper cause to live, just to survive. So I'll read on from there to the end of the canto. In limits only it was powerful, acute to capture truth for outward use. Its knowledge was the body's instrument. Absorbed in the little works of its prison house, it turned around the same unchanging points, in the same circle of interest and desire, but thought itself the master of its jail. Although for action, not for wisdom made, thought was its apex, or its gutter's rim. It saw an image of the external world, and saw its surface self, but knew no more. Out of a slow, confused, embroiled self-search, mind grew to a clarity cut out, precise, a gleam enclosed in a stone ignorance. In this bound thinking's narrow leadership, tied to the soil, inspired by common things, attached to a confined, familiar world, amid the multitude of her motived plots, her changing actors and her million masks, life was a play monotonously the same. There were no vast perspectives of the spirit, no swift invasions of unknown delight, no golden distances of wide release. This petty state resembled our human days, but fixed to eternity of changeless type, a moment's movement doomed to last through time. Existence, bridge-like, spanned the inconscient gulfs, a half-illumined building in a mist, which from a void of form arose to sight and jutted out into a void of soul. A little light in a great darkness born. Life knew not where it went, nor whence it came. Around all floated still the nescient haze. So the first line start with it. In limits only, it was powerful. This stage of being, the being at this stage, still an animal in so many respects, just a beginning of mind consciousness. Dana, would you begin?
In limits, only it was powerful. Acute to capture, prove for outward use. Its knowledge was the body's instrument. Absorbed in the very works of its present house, it turned around the same unchanging arms in the same circle of interest and desire, but thought itself the master of its day.
So this being can be quite clever, acute, to capture small truths just for outer use, for external use. What knowledge it has serves the body. That consciousness is fully absorbed, concentrated on all the little tasks it has to do to keep its body alive. So it's a very limited routine, turned around the same unchanging points, sleeping and eating and mating and hunting, in the same circle of interest and desire. It's just concerned with its own needs, its own wishes, its own little satisfactions. But there's this feeling in it that it's very important, that it's the master, it's the ruler of its prison. It's imprisoned in this round of physical needs, but still it feels very self-satisfied with itself.
But in a way it's true, no? In a way it is true because it is the master of its own desires.
Its own prison house. It's not much of a master, but in that limited sphere, yes. Yeah.
Instead of some other being is going to rule, its rules it
Has a certain, well, it's ruled by its interests and desires. No? Martin, you would read?
Although for action, not for wisdom made, thought was its apex, or its latter ring, its own image of the external world, and so it served itself, but knew no more.
So this animal mind is made for action, not what we would think of as wisdom. But still, the highest point of its being is thought of a kind. But Sri Aurobindo here makes a little joke. He says, if we can think of that as a highest point, it's actually just the rim of the gutter, the drain where it lives. But still, it is a certain level of achievement. That being does see an image of the outer world around it, and it sees its own surface self, but nothing more than that. These are kind of proto-human beings, but we can see it in animals, the way they are focused very much on themselves and their own needs. Philomena.
Out of a slow, confused, embroiled self-search, mind grew to her clarity cut out faces, a clean enclosed in a stone ignorance. In his bound thinking's narrow leadership, tied to the soil, inspired by common things, attached to a familiar world. Amid the multitude of motivated thoughts, changing actors and millions mask, life was a day monotonously the same.
Yes. So out of that confused first misty movement of mind, a slow, confused, embroiled, it means complicated and complex, not finding its way, as if you're caught in a maze. But from that state, mind does develop further. It grows through this self-interest and focus on being the master of its jail. It does grow to a certain kind of clarity, of clearness, clear-cut, precise, focused on certain particular things. A gleam of light, enclosed, it's surrounded on all sides by this stone ignorance, the ignorance of matter. So this is the highest that life has come at this level. It's led by this kind of bound thinking of the animal mind. It's tied to the soil, to the earth. It's not inspired by high dreams and hopes and ideals. It's only inspired by common things. Can become very attached to a confined, a limited, enclosed world which is familiar to it. If we remember what Sri Aurobindo showed us about life at the beginning of Canto 3, and then the worlds of griefless life, this seems a very, very small and poor way for life to express itself. No? In this situation, even though she's surrounded by the multitude of all her possible lines and forms of action, all the many changing actors, there are different characters, many different life forms, and these million masks, these many, many individual forms that she disguises herself in. Still, life at this level is a play, a game that's monotonously the same, repeating itself over and over and over again. What is missing, Kamla?
There were no vast perspective of the spirit, no swift invasion of unknown delight, no golden distances of wide release. These
are the things that we expect from mind or from the greater life, no? Vast perspectives of the spirit, wide possibilities, great vistas. No swift invasions of unknown delight. The higher levels of life that we may be touched by sudden experiences of new, unexpected forms of delight, of bliss. No? There's nothing like that. There are no golden distances of wide release. The experience is all limited, confined, with an everyday, ordinary sort of experience. Those golden distances of release from the focus on the physical and its needs. No? Those wonderful possibilities are missing at this stage of the development. Bhavana.
This steady state resembled a human being, but fixed to eternity of changeless time, a moment's movement doomed to last through time.
Yes. So this petty state, Asvapati is seeing it, so small, so little, so dull. He says it's something like our human days. But in our human days there is the possibility of change, development, growth. But this is a typal world. There's no evolution. There's no possibility of change. It's just a state which stays the same, doomed forever to last through time, or fixed to an eternity of changeless type. This is the difference between the subtle worlds and our world. We get touched by them, but we aren't condemned to be fixed always in that particular level of consciousness. That's the wonderful thing about being a human being and living on this earth. Although there may be difficulties, there's this wonderful gift, the possibility of progress and development and growth and change. Asvapati sees this moment's movement. It's just something that happens in the course of evolution. But it's doomed. It will go on. That state will always be there, unchanging, all through the whole course of time. Ganga Lakshmi.
Existence breach-like spanned unconscious graves, her earth illumined building in a mist, which from a void of form arose to sight and dripped out into a void of sorrow.
So this is how he sees this world. There's all the great possibilities of infinite existence. And here he sees that like a bridge, spanning and connecting all the gulfs, the deep levels of unconscious matter. And it looks like a building, half lit up, enveloped in mist. And he can't really see the bottom of the building or the top of the building. This building seems to rise up from a state in which there's no form, a void of form, an emptiness where things are shapeless and formless. It's rising up in front of Asvapati. He sees that building, and it's as if it's not really supported. It's jutting out like a bridge that doesn't reach the other side, jutting out into another kind of emptiness, the emptiness of soul. Below, there's no form. As we go higher, we would expect, or there would be a possibility of some higher consciousness, but that hasn't yet been realized. So there's this very poignant last 3 lines. Joel, you would read, please.
A little light in a great darkness born. Life knew not where it went, nor whence it came. Around all floated still the nascent haze.
So life does represent some consciousness, no? Some energy, but it's just a little light born into a great darkness of the inertia and unconsciousness of matter. And it doesn't know where it is going. It doesn't know where it has come from. Whence means from where. Because around everything is still floating this mist, this fog of nescience, of not knowing. So in this last section of this canto, Aswapati has shown somehow a level of mind, a level of life, where some kind of mentality, of thought is developing. And you might think, one could expect, that he would go on to describe the development of mind. But before he does that, Sri Aurobindo has a lot more to say about life, the development of life. His exploration of the life worlds. It starts with Canto 3, and we've just finished Canto 4, and it continues through Canto 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And only when we come to Canto 10 does he begin his exploration of the worlds of mind. Yes. Why? Why has Sri Aurobindo paid so much attention to all the different life levels of life consciousness? I remember finding a passage from one of his other writings, perhaps it's letters, where he's spoken about something he calls the psychic prana. It doesn't mean psychic in the sense of the psychic being, but the prana, the energy of the subtle life worlds. And that influences our behavior, our human behavior, so much. He says, unless that can be purified, then there's no real possibility of further progress. So I think it is to make us aware of this psychic prana, the worlds, the realms, and the effect that they have on us human beings. That's what is really focused on in these next cantos. So instead of moving on from the kingdoms of the little life to the kingdoms and Godheads of the lower mind, he continues with the Godheads of the little life. What are the immortal beings, the spirit beings, the subtle beings that are working away on this level of psychic prana, we can say life energy, lower life energy. So we can read the next few. Yes?
Yeah.
From
for me it's so difficult to understand. For example, line 670, life knew not where it went, nor whence it came. I agree so lot of it. But at the other side, I was thinking, all was there, all is there. I thought, Shraddhavan was saying that. So why didn't life not know where it came from? So that's so difficult for me to understand.
Because it doesn't yet have the consciousness to, it's just aware of its own small sensations and interests and desires. It is not, its consciousness is not yet able to encompass any bigger picture. Just all these little experiences from moment to moment. So nothing like what we would really think of as knowledge. Consciousness is there, a kind of consciousness. I always think about my little cat. No, you can see her thinking, oh, they came home, food. She hears another cat in the garden. Oh, he's there. I must hide. No. These are little thoughts that she has. And she's worked out in her mind a kind of map of our house and how it's connected with the surroundings. Very limited surroundings. She won't go far away. And what are the dangers there, and what are the interesting things? Maybe there's new smells in the morning when she goes out. No. It's such a limited thing, and she suffers from that. I see that she suffers from that. Sometimes she wails, oh, this is all so terrible. It's not enough, not enough. But what can she do about it? She simply doesn't have the consciousness. So that's a very, very poignant stage in our development. This is in our psychology. We've got a level in our consciousness which is at this primitive animal level, and which can get very distressed if things are not quite the way we think they should be or expect them to be. Can get very confused and despairing even, if things don't go according to routine. It's not a very, for most of us, it's not a very dominant part of our consciousness. But if we observe ourselves, we can see that it's there, and it may be affecting our choices, our decisions, our movements. The little life. Does that help you to?
It's difficult for me to understand. So, if I understand you well, Shraddhavan is not saying that it's all there. I don't understand why it's.
What do you mean? It is all there.
Yeah,
of course, the whole universe is there. Yes, but
all.
it's just going little steps, little levels. This.
I understand that part. I understand so well.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it's there.
It's like a stair. That's how he's describing it. No? There's all the levels of existence, from the apparent absolute inertia and unconsciousness of pre-matter. No? And these are like steps, rungs in a ladder, steps in a stairway. These levels, he told us in the first canto of this book, have been brought into existence by a descent of the supreme creative force, the Divine Mother. And she's gone down all these levels. In fact, as she's plunged down, she's brought all these levels into existence. And so when she got to the bottom, earth, something of all of them is contained in the earth. And that's why it can kaleidoscope out again. And what Asvapati is doing, we have seen in book 1, that he's become aware of the limitations of the human state, even at its best, even at its highest. And he thinks, or he suddenly realizes with his secret knowledge, that it's not meant to stay the way it is always. So how is it going to change? He sets out to find the power that will be able to change this human life that we know it, and subhuman life that we perceive. What's going to be able to turn that into the divine life which he's already experienced in his higher spiritual experiences? And he says everything is so wonderful there. All this has to become wonderful like that. How is it going to happen? How is it going to change? And he's looking for the power that can do that. And that's why he's going step by step by step up this ladder, exploring this world stair. And at each step he sees how things are at that level, but it's not what he's looking for. So he has to go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And even when he reaches the end of book 2, he's reached a much higher level, almost the supramental, but he still hasn't found it. So then he has to go on in search of the unknowable, and finally to encounter the Supreme Divine Mother. And she tells him, I know what you're looking for, but I can't give it to you now. It's not time. So then he asks her, you have to help us. This is going on too long. It's too terrible. You have to help us. Send a part of yourself into the human world to help us to move more quickly. And she agrees. She says, yes, I will come. One will come. One will really change things. And so Savitri is born. And Savitri has to take up this quest of King Aswapati, which he hasn't completed, through her story, her love story with Shraddhavan, and then his death. She has to manifest out of herself this supreme power of transformation of the Supreme Divine Mother. And even then we don't see the fulfillment. Only in book 11 it's promised. Finally she's facing the Lord, and he says, yes, what you've asked for, I will give it. It will happen. It's my will also. It will definitely, inevitably, it will be fulfilled in time. And he gives these 2 long prophecies, what this will mean for Savitri herself and what it will mean for the earth and for humanity. So that is described, but it's hinted at, these higher states, but it's only there as a promise that it's going to come. And then she returns to the earth, and something fundamental has changed in the earth because this promise has been made by the Supreme. It will become a divine life on earth. And somehow we are promised the possibility of participating in that process. Just by being here, no? Just by being part of Earth evolution. More or less, we are still very unconscious. Around all is floating still the nescient haze. We don't understand. It's very difficult to grasp intellectually. But somehow through the power of poetry, he's suggested to us some glimpses, some possibilities. But now in this next canto, Canto 5, he's not going a step up, he's going a step in. We have seen the development of the different life forms. It's more or less on the outer level, no? But now what Aswapati is having a look at it, what are all the forces, the little beings that are at work on the life level, affecting things there and affecting us also.
In limits only it was powerful, acute to capture truth for outward use. Its knowledge was the body's instrument, absorbed in the little works of its prison house. It turned around the same unchanging points, in the same circle of interest and desire, but thought itself the master of its jail. Although for action, not for wisdom made, thought was its apex, or its gutter's rim. It saw an image of the external world, and saw its surface self, but knew no more. Out of a slow, confused, embroiled self-search, mind grew to a clarity cut out, precise, a gleam enclosed in a stone ignorance. In this bound thinking's narrow leadership, tied to the soil, inspired by common things, attached to a confined, familiar world, amid the multitude of her motived plots, her changing actors and her million masks, life was a play monotonously the same. There were no vast perspectives of the spirit, no swift invasions of unknown delight, no golden distances of wide release. This petty state resembled our human days, but fixed to eternity of changeless type, a moment's movement doomed to last through time. Existence, bridge-like, spanned the inconscient gulfs, a half-illumined building in a mist, which from a void of form arose to sight and jutted out into a void of soul. A little light in a great darkness born. Life knew not where it went, nor whence it came. Around all floated still the nescient haze.
So these next cantos are not really very nice. They're quite difficult to digest, except here and there Sri Aurobindo gives us a wonderful explanation. We can just read a few lines more. Slava, would you like to read?
Yeah.
You start in the Canto 5.
Yes. Efficient and narrow power with the tragic form. He saw the empire of the little life and unhappy corner in eternity. Eternity. It lived upon the margin of the idea, protected by ignorance as in a shell.
So Asvapati is seeing, as if from outside, the empire, the country of the little life. He sees it as a fixed and narrow power with rigid forms. There's not much possibility of change there. And he sees that in all eternity, with all infinite possibilities, this particular realm is an unhappy corner. It lived upon the margin of the idea with a capital I. This is the idea that has given rise to the creation. So just on the edge or on the outskirts somewhere, there's this unhappy corner. And it can only exist because it's protected by ignorance, which is like a shell around a soft-bodied animal protecting it. So he sees that unhappy corner and he wants to learn the secret of that world. Alice, will you read?
Then, hoping to learn the secret of this world, he peered across its scanty fringe of sight to disengage from its surface-clear obscurity. The force that moved it and the idea that made the imposing smallness on the infinite, the ruling spirit of its littleness,
the divine law that gave it right to be, its claim on nature, and its need in time.
So that's what he wants to find out. It's so clear, no? He wants to learn the secret of this world. So it's as if it's enveloped in mist, and you can only see a little way. So he peers, he looks with difficulty across this scanty fringe of sight. A fringe is something on the edge, no? On the edge of the shawl. There's a fringe. Scanty means not enough. What he wants to do is to somehow see clearly, try to see clearly from this, on the surface it seems clear, but actually it's misty, it's obscure. He wants to find out what is the force that's moving in that world, and what is the creative idea that has brought it into existence, that has made the ruling spirit of its littleness, the littleness of this world. Somehow, in order for this little world, or this world of the little life, to exist, something has had to be defined in infinity, in all infinite possibility. What has caused this particular world of littleness to come into existence? What is the ruling spirit that keeps it so little? And what is the divine law that has given it a right to exist? What is its claim on nature? And what is its need in time? There must be a need, a necessity for it. Otherwise it wouldn't be there. So that's what we shall be exploring in this next canto, along with King Aswapati. What is the...
In nature and time, travel is more. That means the old time. Time.
Yes, in this creation of time and space, why did this little corner, unhappy corner, have to come into existence? And in all universal nature, all the different forms and movements and forces, what is this? What right has this little world to exist? What is its claim, no, that allows it to exist?
He says it's need in time. So
Yes, so in this world that we belong to, there's a need for this place. What is it? Why? For heaven's sake, why? Couldn't we do without it? He will tell us a little bit. So that's just at this level. Yeah? Of course, all the other levels of existence are there, but since Aswapati has decided to explore each of the levels thoroughly, step by step, we're just focusing on this unhappy corner of eternity for now. He has had a much wider vision of the whole thing. And it's like Sri Aurobindo is giving us a kind of map. And so that when we find ourselves in some corner of the universe, a happy corner or an unhappy corner, we might be able to recognize where we are, where have we landed up.
A fixed and narrow power with rigid forms, he saw the empire of the little life, an unhappy corner in eternity. It lived upon the margin of the idea, protected by ignorance, as in a shell. Then, hoping to learn the secret of this world, he peered across its scanty fringe of sight, to disengage from its surface clear obscurity the force that moved it and the idea that made, imposing smallness on the infinite, the ruling spirit of its littleness, the divine law that gave it right to be, its claim on nature and its need in time.